Welcome back, everybody. Today we're diving into something that I think we can all relate to at least a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Dating disasters. We've got two sources that are full of them. 37 funny dating stories that have left people amused from Bored Panda, and 40 weird date stories that will make you feel better about your own love life from Thought Catalog.
Interesting. I'm ready to cringe.
Oh, I'm sure we will.
And maybe learn a thing or two.
Right. Because sometimes you got to laugh at these things, but also maybe dodge a bullet or two yourself.
Yeah, you never know when these stories might come in handy.
Okay, so to kick things off, we've got this story from Reddit about a guy who thought, hey, a full-body massage is a great first date idea. I mean, what do you even say to that?
Well, I guess it depends. Maybe if you're both really into massages and talked about it beforehand, but just springing that on someone.
Yeah, no, not cool.
Definitely not. I think a first date should be about getting to know each other.
Right.
Not about being basically naked with a stranger.
Exactly. You got to build some trust first. Speaking of bad ideas, there's another story on Reddit about a date at a lingerie cafe.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. And it gets worse. He brought his friends.
He brought his friends. What was he thinking?
I have no idea. I mean, who does that? A first date should be about getting to know the other person.
Yeah, one-on-one, in a normal setting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This isn't a bachelor party. And speaking of weird settings, one person in Thought Catalog talked about being taken to a Shriner's bingo night for a first date.
Bingo.
Yep.
Bingo.
I mean, to each their own, I guess.
Yeah.
But that doesn't sound very romantic.
Right. And another one went to a Christian church revival for a first date, which, again, fine for some people.
Yeah, but maybe not if you're a pagan, like the person in the story.
Oh, yeah. It's all about knowing your audience. Or, in this case, your date.
Right. Maybe a quick chat about what you both enjoy before the date would help avoid these situations.
Totally. Now, get ready for this one. One story in Thought Catalog talked about a date who brought their mother along.
Their mother. I know, right? What is with these people?
I don't even know what to say to that. I mean, maybe they're super close, but still.
Yeah, it's a bit much. Maybe a red flag.
Maybe a giant red flag.
Okay, this next one is just bizarre. This guy argued with his date about her eye color. And get this, she had an art degree.
Wow. So she actually knows about color.
Yep. She knows her stuff, but he still argued.
It makes you wonder about some people. Like, what's the point of even arguing about something like that?
I know, right? Just accept reality. Okay, are you ready for some rapid-fire awkwardness?
Hit me.
One guy called his date the wrong name twice. 2 different names.
Oh, that's rough.
Then there's the person who accidentally ate a whole wasabi ball on a dark date thinking it was something else.
Ouch!
And to top it off, someone ran into their ex on a date at a family restaurant.
Oh, no.
I know, right? Kind of awkward.
That's a whole lot of awkward in one place. Maybe just avoid family restaurants on dates.
All right. Okay, one last story before we move on.
Yeah.
This guy picked wildflowers instead of buying flowers for his date. Now, is that sweet or cheap?
That's a tough one. I kind of like the idea, but it depends how it's done, right?
Exactly. Like, if he presented them really nicely and made it special, maybe it could be cute.
Yeah, but if he's just trying to get out of spending money, not so much.
So many ways for things to go wrong. All right, now let's dive into those dates where the behavior is just unexplained.
Unexplained. I'm intrigued.
We've got one from Reddit about a date who cried while telling the story of their dog's death.
Oh, that's sad. I mean, losing a pet is hard.
Totally, but bursting into tears on a first date, maybe a little too much.
Yeah, it's all about timing and place, right?
Okay, buckle up for this one. A woman pulled a steak knife on her date after hearing voices.
Whoa, that escalated quickly.
Right. This brings up a serious point about mental health. If you're experiencing something like that, it's important to get help.
Absolutely. And maybe not jump into the dating scene just yet.
Agreed. Okay, ready for a lighter one?
Please.
A date ate their soup with their hands.
What?
And then judged the other person for using a knife and fork to eat chicken tenders.
Wow. The irony.
Right. Like pot calling the kettle black. Much.
Maybe they just really love soup.
Maybe. Okay, and before we move on to the next theme, I got to share a few more gems. Reading an epic poem about an ex at a restaurant.
Oh, no.
Talking nonstop about their job for 2 hours.
Yikes.
And taking someone to a strip club without any warning.
What is wrong with these people?
I don't know. But it makes for some interesting stories.
It definitely highlights how different everyone's idea of a good date is.
For sure. Okay, one last story before we move on. This woman said she couldn't date men with hairy backs.
Okay.
while on a date with an Iranian man.
Oh,
Talk about putting your foot in your mouth.
yeah. You got to be mindful of what you say on a date.
For sure. Okay, I think we've established that.
I think so.
So before we move on, any thoughts on these wild dates?
Well, it seems like some people could really use a dating etiquette guide.
All right, and maybe a little self-awareness wouldn't hurt.
Seriously.
Well, on that note, I think it's time to move on to our next theme. Red flags and deal breakers.
Okay, I'm ready to hear more cringe-worthy stories.
Oh, don't worry, we've got plenty more coming up.
Oh boy, I can't wait. So now let's talk about something a little more serious.
Okay, yeah, we've had some laughs, but dating isn't all fun and games, right?
Right. And it's important to be able to spot those red flags and deal breakers.
Okay, so let's break that down a bit. What exactly are we talking about here?
Well, red flags, those are like warning signs. Things that might be a little off, but maybe not a complete deal breaker.
Okay, like yellow lights. Proceed with caution.
Exactly. You don't necessarily stop, but you pay attention. Now, deal breakers, those are your non-negotiables.
The hard stops.
Yep, the things that you absolutely can't compromise on in a relationship.
Got it. So red flags are things to watch out for, and deal breakers are, well, deal breakers.
Exactly. You need to know what you're willing to overlook and what you're absolutely not okay with.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, can you give us some examples?
Sure. Let's say someone is always canceling plans last minute. That could be a red flag. Maybe they're flaky or just not that interested.
Okay, yeah, I see that. But not necessarily a deal breaker.
Maybe not. Depends on the situation, right? Maybe they have a really demanding job or something. But you want to pay attention to that pattern.
Right, okay. So what would be a deal breaker then?
Well, let's say you're passionate about animal rights and your date is, I don't know, a big game hunter.
Ooh, yeah, that's probably not going to work.
Probably not. Those are core values that are unlikely to change, and that can lead to some serious conflict down the line.
Right, fundamental differences like that are deal breakers.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's go back to our dating disasters and see if we can spot some red flags and deal breakers in action. What about the guy who brought a dating contract to the first date?
Oh, yeah, the contract guy.
What was he thinking?
I have no idea. That's a huge red flag for me. It screams control issues.
Right, like chill out, dude. It's just the first date.
Seriously. Relationships should be built on trust and mutual respect, not contracts.
Agreed. And what about the woman who said she couldn't date men with hairy backs while on a date with an Iranian man?
That's just, I don't even know what to say. So insensitive.
And also not very self-aware.
Right. Like, hello, look who you're on a date with.
Exactly. Deal breaker for sure.
Definitely.
Okay, let's get into some more subtle red flags. What about the guy who's really into taxidermy?
Taxidermy.
Yeah, and staging battles with dead mice.
Okay. That's unique.
Right. Not necessarily a deal breaker for everyone, but definitely a red flag for some.
Yeah, it raises some questions about their personality, you know?
For sure. Okay, this one's a bit messy. A woman got stood up after a massage, and then the guy introduced her as his girlfriend to his friends.
Oh, wow, that's messed up.
Right. Talk about disrespectful.
Total lack of consideration for her feelings.
And also kind of manipulative, right?
Absolutely. That's a big red flag for me.
Okay, last one. This woman discovered her date was wearing the same pants to work the next day after. Well, let's just say things got a little messy during a makeout session.
Ooh. Okay, that's just gross.
Right. Hygiene is important.
Seriously. And it shows a lack of respect for the other person, too.
Yeah, it makes you wonder about their attention to detail in other areas of life.
Good point. Sometimes those little things can be a sign of bigger problems.
So is there a clear line between red flags and deal breakers? Or is it more of a gray area?
It's definitely a spectrum. What might be a red flag for one person could be a deal breaker for another. It all depends on your individual values and priorities.
Right, and what you're willing to tolerate in a relationship.
Exactly. The key is to be self-aware, communicate your needs, and be willing to walk away if something doesn't feel right.
So trust your gut.
Always trust your gut. It's usually right.
Okay, great advice. Now, any final thoughts on red flags and deal breakers before we wrap up this part of the deep dive?
Well, as we've seen, dating can be a minefield. But it's important to remember that you have the power to choose who you spend your time with.
Right, you don't have to settle for someone who doesn't meet your standards.
Exactly. You deserve to be with someone who respects you, treats you well, and shares your values.
And someone who does laundry.
Yes, definitely someone who does laundry.
So much to think about. It's kind of like you got to be open to possibilities, but also protect yourself at the same time.
Yeah, it's tricky. You have to be vulnerable, but not too vulnerable.
Right.
It's a balance for sure.
And I think a lot of people are afraid of that vulnerability.
Absolutely. It can be scary to put yourself out there, but it's also the only way to truly connect with someone.
Right. You got to risk getting hurt if you want to find real love.
Exactly. And I think that's what makes these dating disaster stories so relatable. We've all been there, right?
Oh, absolutely. We've all had those awkward moments, those cringe-worthy encounters.
It's part of the human experience.
But, maybe those awkward first dates aren't always a bad thing. Maybe they can even lead to something great.
Oh, for sure. I mean, think about it. A first date is just a tiny snapshot of who someone is. We all have bad days, right?
Yeah, we don't always put our best foot forward.
Exactly. So maybe that guy who showed up in the same pants from the night before, maybe he's actually a really great guy who just had a laundry mishap.
Okay, maybe. But hopefully he learned his lesson.
Right. But the point is, you can't always judge someone based on one encounter. You got to give people a chance to show you who they really are.
So we shouldn't write someone off completely based on a first date.
Not necessarily. I mean, if there are major red flags or deal breakers, then yeah, maybe move on. But if it's just a matter of some awkwardness or a few quirks, give them a chance to redeem themselves.
Okay, I like that. Give people a second chance. But also trust your gut, right?
Absolutely. Always trust your instincts. If something feels off, it probably is. But also be open to the possibility that people can surprise you.
It's all about finding that balance, right, between being open and being cautious.
Exactly.
And remember that dating should be fun.
Yes. It shouldn't feel like a chore or a job interview.
Right. It should be about connecting with new people, exploring different perspectives, and hopefully having some laughs along the way.
Exactly. And if a date doesn't lead to a romantic connection, that's okay too. You can still learn something from the experience.
Yeah, every date is a learning experience, even bad ones. Speaking of learning, any final tips for our listeners out there who are navigating the wild world of dating?
Okay, here are a few things to keep in mind. First, be yourself. Don't try to be someone you're not. Authenticity is key.
So true. Be you, because everyone else is taken, right?
Exactly. Second, be confident. Believe in yourself and your worthiness of love.
Confidence is definitely attractive.
It is. And third, communicate. Be open and honest about your expectations, your needs, and your boundaries.
Don't be afraid to speak up.
Right. And finally, have fun. Don't take dating too seriously. Relax, enjoy the ride, and see what happens.
Love that. So to wrap things up, the most important takeaway from all these dating disaster stories is that, well, we're all human.
Absolutely. We all make mistakes, we all have awkward moments, and we're all just trying to find our way in this crazy world of love and relationships.
Exactly. So to all our listeners out there, keep your heads up, your hearts open, and your sense of humor intact. And remember, even the most disastrous date can make for a great story later on.
That's right. And who knows, maybe you'll find your happily ever after in the most unexpected place.
And on that note, we'll sign off for today. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of dating disasters. We'll see you next time for another deep dive into something equally fascinating and maybe a little bit awkward. Until then, happy dating, everyone.